Now, just a few hours ago here in Washington, this was the scene in a packed U.S. House chamber on Capitol Hill. Take a look.
May God forever bless the United States of America.
That's right. President Barack Obama, the leader of the United States of America, addressed the... Wait a minute. That's not Obama. That's the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu. Now, I'm sorry. All of that wild applause must have really thrown me off track. So let's try this whole thing again. The Israeli Prime Minister's speech today had all of the trappings of a State of the Union address by an American president with soaring approval ratings. In fact, Netanyahu got 29 standing ovations from lawmakers, compared with just 25 that President Obama got during his January speech to Congress. Now, some critics are actually warning that this is an indication of something more than just congressional support for Israel. Some go as far as to say that the Israeli Prime Minister, in fact, wields more influence over the U.S. Congress than America's president. Now, one such critic is a former Alaska senator, and he actually ran for a presidential office in 2008. His name is Mike Gravel, and I spoke with him earlier about this issue. Take a look at what he had to say.
On this particular subject, there's no question Netanyahu is more powerful than the president because the Congress is sold out to AIPAC. And so they play either the executive off against the Congress or vice versa. But right now, the Congress is impotent in terms of Middle Eastern foreign policy.
Has America's foreign policy towards Israel actually changed?
It hasn't changed at all, and his speech lacked content. It was just more of the same Obama type of stuff. The embarrassment was, of course, that Netanyahu comes to town and upbraids the president and tells him that what he's suggesting is not going to happen. But that's to be expected from Netanyahu, believe me.
Well, what do you mean by that?
Well, Netanyahu doesn't want any peace. He never has. He's never been characterized as peace. He and Sharon are cut from the same spool of cloth. What they want to do is they're prepared to go ahead and, over time, push out the Palestinians from the West Bank and from Jerusalem. That's their plan. If it takes 1,000 years, that's their plan. That's what they're going to do. So
you think that Netanyahu is genuinely not committed to any sort of peaceful solution to this issue, and that as long as he's in power, the status quo will remain?
Totally. And I really want to not equivocate on that. Netanyahu is a product of his culture, which is a bunker-type mentality that you hunker down and use any excuse to push out the Palestinians from the West Bank and Gaza so that you can take the whole thing over. That's their plan, and they're not deviating from that plan in the slightest. And the United States becomes the victim because we don't have the guts or the wherewithal to oppose them. They are stronger. Netanyahu is stronger than the President of the United States with respect to Middle Eastern policy.
Why is it that so many lawmakers on the Hill are reluctant to ask the difficult questions that need to be asked when it comes to U.S.-Israeli foreign policy?
The reaction you see is the groveling, and that's the word, groveling, to the interest of AIPAC by members of Congress. And with respect to the 67 borders, that's a given. That has been a given in international law and in international beliefs since 1967. He articulated nothing new, but this is not what Israel wants under the leadership of Netanyahu. Now, there are very strong forces within Israel who don't buy into this scenario. But like the United States, they are ruled by a military-industrial clique, and that's the way the United States is ruled. And, of course, Obama is obviously part of that clique. But Obama, on this particular issue, and the Congress on this particular issue, lack moral courage.
And what's behind that, Senator? I mean, why is it we value free speech and open debate here in this country, and yet it seems like when it comes to the question of Israel, it's one of those sacred things that if you're a lawmaker and, God forbid, you speak out, you say something that sort of doesn't toe the accepted line, that's almost political suicide. What is it that has made Israel such a critical issue for our politicians?
It is political suicide, and it's political suicide because the Jewish community, primarily AIPAC, musters whatever monies are needed to defeat anybody who doesn't toe the line or raises their head in opposition, or to turn around and support anybody who will unilaterally support the interest of Israel over those of the United States of America. It's unpatriotic. I mean, our American interests should be first and foremost. That's not the case for the Middle East. It certainly is not the case for Israel. And that's shameful. That's a shameful chapter in American history.
But is that really what you think, that AIPAC, a lobbying group, is really sort of the fear that's behind this? Is it that simple, that it's political donations and money?
It is that simple, and all you have to do is look at the record. If somebody stands up in Congress opposed to Israel, you see the wealth of the nation from the Jewish community focus on that person's defeat. Mm-hmm. So politicians are more interested in having a job than in doing what's right. And so if they want to keep their job, then they've got to keep themselves clean on the Israeli issue and respond to AIPAC's demands for their support. The United States of America does not control its foreign policy with respect to the Middle East.
And Senator, is there anything unusual to you about sort of having the president give this major address about the Arab Spring and the Middle East, sort of go away on his trip to Europe, and to have Netanyahu address lawmakers as if he's as if he's President Obama or something? Is there anything that sort of stands out to you as strange about Netanyahu's address before Congress?
Well, what's strange is that a foreign leader has more power than the president on this subject. That's what's strange, but that's the tragedy of America's foreign policy. I see no immediate change in that regard unless there's a change in the government of Israel. And as I pointed out, there are large factions in Israel that do not buy this war mentality, that do not buy bringing about the oblivion of the Palestinian community. They do not buy that, but they're not in power. And so maybe an election will change that in the future. But thus far, and at this present time in American history, we are stuck with the situation where the Congress and the President of the United States are moral cowards when it comes to the justice that should be brought about in an adjudication of the interest between Palestine and Israel.
Now, that was former U.S. Senator and presidential candidate Mike Gravel.